Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Center podcast. I'm Emiliya Zhivotovskaya, your host and founder of the Flourishing Center. We are training the change agents of the world and equipping them with research-based tools for healthy, happy, and successful living. And we're so grateful that you're here.
This is Science Says, where positive psychology and mind-body expert Emiliya Zhivotovskaya will review a recent research study with you and teach you how to put knowledge into action to help you live a flourishing life.
Thanks for listening, and let's dive in. Hello and welcome to Science Says. Today's research article is a 2017 study that was published titled Effects of Intentionally Treated Water on the Growth of Arabidopsis thaliana Seeds with Cryptochromium Mutations. Now you might be thinking to yourself, why on a podcast on human flourishing are we looking at a research study on plants and the idea of intentionally treated water? This research study that was published by Dean Radin and his colleagues is a follow-up to earlier studies that were conducted asking the question of whether or not simple intentions or prayers or, let's say, thought energy, whether or not this could actually impact physical things in a way that we can actually measure them. I'm excited to bring in this research study because the previous studies that had been done on chocolate and tea are studies that I have read about, that I've been following, and I've been waiting for more research of this type to be conducted. And so I was very excited to come across the fact that just a few years ago, they did a similar type of study. And this is contributing to more and more research that's coming out on the intersection between things like quantum physics and actual objective measures that scientists are starting to create for things like intention and thought. The earlier studies on chocolate and tea measured the impact of having people meditate or pray over or infuse chocolate or tea with their intention, and they looked at the subjective experience that the consumers of this particular food had. The thing that made these research studies really groundbreaking is that they were all double-blind, randomized placebo control studies. This is the gold standard in research. So when something is double-blind and randomized, this means that when a person is actually consuming the chocolate, not only do they not know which chocolate they've received, but the person who's given it to them doesn't know which chocolate has been prayed over or not, nor does the person beforehand. So it's really the gold standard for how we want to run experiments. What the researchers found is that when the chocolate was infused with positive intentions, such as, may the person who receives this experience greater vigor, health, and well-being, that when people consumed those chocolates compared to the ones that had not been infused with intention, they actually reported greater increases to their mood compared to the control group. Same thing was found with the impact of tea on a person's well-being. This study is looking to objectively measure the impact of intention. And so they chose to do this with plants. They looked at what would happen when a group of monks would infuse the water that would one day go on to water a set of plants, compared to water that was also in the room where the Buddhist monks were, but it was not intentionally set into, it wasn't prayed into. So I'm going to describe this study for you and tell you what they found, and then give you some thoughts around how you might use this research to impact your day-to-day life. First, let's start with the type of plant that the researchers chose. They chose the Arabidopsis thaliana, a small flower that is part of the mustard family, sometimes also known as the mouse ear cress. And the reason they chose this one is because it's one of the most studied plants out there. And what they found is that the genome of this plant was sequenced in 2000. And shortly after, they discovered that the genes that are found inside of this plant may also be suspected as the genes that play a role in human diseases. So they think that the Arabidopsis plant may make it a key resource in the study of genetics, both for plant and human health. They also looked at some of the things that this particular plant has that enables it to grow quickly. There's the photosensitive flavor protein that they call cryptochrome, and there's three different types of cryptochrome that they were looking at. Depending on the type of cryptochrome it was, they found that it was going to play a different role in the well-being of the plant. They also described that this particular protein is something that impacts the photomorphogenesis, the circadian rhythm, the flowering time, and the seed germination time of this particular plant. So this is one of the main things that they're able to see in this plant and that they wanted to measure the impact of the intentions on. They suggest that this particular thing called cryptochrome may be a possible transducer of intention, meaning it's the medium by which intention is moving in the plant, because they said that it's present in all living systems, and they've looked at it as potentially having quantum biological properties. And the cryptochromes that are present in plants are also present in animals. A study in 2018 had actually found that within birds, cryptochromes may be the element that are found in a bird's eye that enables it to detect magnetic fields. So they're thinking that the cryptochrome might actually be the particular transducer, the medium by which intention is actually carried. After identifying which plant they were going to use, they got the bottled water that they were going to use, a case of 24 bottles that were purchased by a research assistant in Taiwan. Then the first author of the study took the water that was first purchased by the research assistant and assigned a label to the bottles using a random number generator, labeling it either A or B. The research assistant then took the bottles to a different room where the meditators were going to be concentrating on it. The meditators were given the instruction to put this intention into the water. They were told to imagine that this Arabidopsis plant that would absorb this water will manifest optimal growth. In particular, it will have increased nutrition, energy, vigor, and well-being. They were told to mentally direct this intention towards the bottles of water, and they did this collectively to the bottles that were grouped in Group B for 20 minutes. They kept the other bottles that were labeled A in the same room at the same time. However, the monks did not direct their energy to it because they didn't want to have any conflicting variables as to where the water was before it actually went onto the plants. Before they closed the session, the monks were also instructed to add in one more affirmation that this enhancement would only be for this batch of water, referring to the treated bottles in B, and were told to hold that intention and actually visualize it as well. Up until then, the only person who had actually touched the water was the research assistant that purchased it. After the water received the intentional treatment, the RA, research assistant, noted the assignment of the conditions on a piece of paper, sealed it in an envelope, took all 24 bottles, and brought them to the first author. This person then brought them to a third author who handled all of the watering, seed germination, and measurement procedures. Note again that the researcher who's now handling the water does not know what A means or what B means, nor does the person who had received the bottles of water and the envelope. The first author contacted the research assistant to find out which bottles had received the assigned intention. That third author was the one who then took the water and all the seeds and began the actual experiment. The seeds were sterilized with bleach and put into a greenhouse where the plants were allowed to grow to maturity. They conducted a number of different types of seeds for the two different types of water. They had three different types of seeds, ones that were going to be focusing on trying to increase what they called the hypocotyl length of the seeds, a group of seeds that were going to be better at chlorophyll measures, and then another one that they called the anthocyanin measurement. And what they found was when they multiplied all of those seeds times the two different types of water and then did multiple repetitions of it, they were able to work with lots and lots of plants to get these measures. What they were looking for was increased levels of chlorophyll and anthocyanin because they know that these things indicate that the plant is healthy and getting a boost to how it's growing. And shorter hypocotyl length would be associated with improved seed growth. So the hypothesis was that the seeds that would be treated in the water that had received the intention would show increased levels of chlorophyll, anthocyanin, and shorter hypocotyl length. And this is exactly what they found. Once the seeds grew enough to be measured, they were passed along to a fourth researcher that first conducted all of the measurements and did all of the statistics on type A and type B. Then the research assistant informed the person who was doing the statistics which of the two bottles received the intention. They also had another statistician number crunch it just to make sure that there wouldn't be an error in the statistician's math. What they found was a statistically significant larger amount of growth and well-being to the plants that were treated with the water that was intentionally treated. They found that the effect size was a 0.63, which is considered a large effect size, and indicating that 63% of the measurement variance was attributable to the treatment. This is really, really, really fascinating because, again, the only differences between these plants was the type of water that they were treated with. One had water that intention was infused into and one that did not. Now, there are a number of things that people might argue could have gone wrong or impacted how these researchers came to their conclusions. It could have been that the statistics were off. Another argument might be that the researchers might have somehow figured out which water was which. But again, because it was double-blind, there was really no way that the person would have been able to tell. This is a really exciting study from my perspective. Again, when I had first come across the research studies that were done on chocolate, I had since then tried to make it a practice that whenever I sit down to have a meal, I would say I'm successful at doing this maybe 50 to 60% of the time, which I'm currently happy with because it takes a long time to form a habit. But what I do is before I sit down and I eat my meal, I actually say a blessing. And I imagine that the food I'm about to put in my body, I ask it to be one of service to my highest good, to my highest well-being. And I put my hands over my food and I imagine sending love into my food. Now, obviously, this is not the same as first infusing the food with love for 20 minutes the way that these monks did and these meditators did. However, I think we are starting to move towards the beginning of what will in the future be many, many research studies that start to confirm this idea that perhaps intention impacts physical forms. This isn't new in spiritual traditions and traditions of Eastern medicine. However, it is new that we now have the statistical measures and the scientific measures to actually map these things out objectively. So I share this research study with you with a little bit of vulnerability that you guys might think that Emiliya's a little bit out there. If this episode has striked your curiosity and you want to look deeper, please visit our website for the show notes, theflourishingcenter.com/podcast. Go ahead and check out the research article yourself, as well as the previous ones that Dr. Radin had conducted on both chocolate and tea, and then give it a go. See what it would be like to start thinking about what if my intentions, my thoughts held a vibration that could impact things. Might you bless your food or the water that you're about to drink before you put it in your body? What impact might this simple action that just takes seconds to do make on you? And what would it be like to do what these Buddhist monks are doing, which is using mindfulness and meditation to train the power of their focus, to train the power of their intention, and perhaps making them even more powerful signal generators for the thoughts that come out of their mind. I hope you found some inspiration from this podcast. And if you do, please, please, please hit that subscribe button. Leave us some feedback, as we know Apple loves to hear what you like about these podcasts and enables us to spread the word to more people. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.
Science Says is brought to you by the Flourishing Center Research Vault, where we simplify the science so you can focus on applying it. If you love being in the know with the latest research but have a hard time keeping up, then this program is just for you. In less than 5 minutes per week, you'll learn about 10 new studies in the field of positive psychology and have access to our vault of over 2,000 research summaries. Visit theflourishingcenter.com/research for a free sample of our weekly research digest and for more information on how to stay in the know, in the science, in a fraction of the time.